Hi, Sylvia here, and today I want to take a deep dive into what I would consider a young adult classic, The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I think that everyone and their mother has read this book, or at least seen the film, or know the premise, and this is your warning now that there are going to be spoilers in this video. But if you haven't seen or heard the story by now, what are you doing? Are you living under a rock? I actually did read this book in 8th grade, but 8th grade Sylvia didn't really like to read, so I more so skimmed Fault in Our Stars, mainly for the sake of being a part of popular culture, and everyone was talking about it and everyone was reading it, and I wanted in on the hype and I felt left out. And so I was like, I read it too, and I'm really interested to see, as someone that I remember the story but I don't really remember that much about the book, what I think of it now as someone who currently, I'm a huge reader. Specifically, reading contemporary romance is quite a big hobby of mine. So I feel like, how is it that I have no memory or no recollection of reading what is considered a pillar in the young adult contemporary romance genre? I'm specifically very interested to reread this book because even though I only skimmed it, I remember thinking that it was significantly better than other work by John Green that I would come to read. Specifically talking about his other works like An Abundance of Catherines and Paper Towns, I thought that in other John Green books, his male characters were, to put it lightly, very annoying. So while I wasn't super into the book, I was, embarrassingly enough, weirdly obsessed with the movie. What does that mean? I was obsessed with the movie. How does one do that? That means that I bought tickets to see it on the night that it came out. That means that I religiously watched John Green's vlogs from the set of the movie and Q&As about the movie. It means that I was up to date on all things Tfios on Tumblr. What is Tfios? Tfios is the acronym for The Fault in Our Stars that was used to promote the movie. And lastly, that means that Boom Clap by Charlie XCX was the only song that I listened to for months. I don't want to talk about it too much. It's too embarrassing, but I will say that I think reading this book or rereading it or whatever and reacting to it is going to be incredibly nostalgic for me. And I'm pretty excited. So I have some reading to get to. I have some reacting to get to, and I will see you on the other side of this novel, man. Hi, I have emerged from my reading cocoon because I finished the book, and I actually had a pretty pleasant experience reading this, and I had a lot of reservations going in, but I do think that John Green did a lot of things right with this book. He was really able to express the feeling of that people with health issues have, of feeling like a burden on those that love them, the strange competitive nature that can kind of come upon someone with a health issue when it comes to doing better than people that are in similar situations to them, which is a very strange feeling, but I definitely have felt that before, and Hazel really, that's a big part of Hazel's journey. And even simple things like the dragon-like sounds of the BiPAP when you are being soothed to sleep. There are very specific aspects that I thought John Green really well portrayed. And this is what I feel about other John Green novels, while I feel like overall arc is good and plot, there are fundamental issues that I have with characters in his novels. So I kind of wanted to break down the two main characters, Augustus Waters and Hazel Grace, and kind of talk about how I feel about them. I have some issues with these characters. Overall, the book has aged better than I expected it to, but I don't feel passionate about recommending it either. It was a very pleasant read, but I was not enthralled. I was not emotionally invested. I'm someone that I cry incredibly easily when it comes to books. Not with movies, not with music, not with TV shows, but books, I am a crier. This book, I definitely, my eyes welled, but I did not shed a tear. And like, this is a really sad book. So I think that really shows my emotional investment, because it doesn't take much for me to sob when it comes to novels. I will say that that definitely is a big tell, the fact that I didn't cry very much. I want to start with teenage heartthrob Augustus Waters. Gus, when I read this book originally, I mean, I already talked about how I was a very big fangirl when it comes to this franchise, but I remember him being charming and swoon-worthy and just so charismatic. And I mean, yes, those things aren't not true, but now as a 19-year-old college student reading this book again, the overall takeaway of Gus is that he's kind of creepy. I don't think, oh, he's so charming. I think, oh, he's kind of, I'm a little irked by you, man. Like, what? It is a part of his persona that he's full of himself. And, you know, like, I get that. People are vain. But I feel like his narcissism, it crosses the line of being, like, funny and, like, sort of like, this is annoying. I don't really, you're so into yourself. It's kind of a lot. One of the most famous scenes in this franchise is when they first meet. And basically, this is described by Hazel as he is intensely staring at her for long periods of time. And she says that it would be creepy and kind of predatory, but it's not, because he's attractive, which, that's a little alarming. When they do eventually speak, he says that he was staring at her because he enjoys looking at beautiful things. As a girl who is physically vulnerable and around the same age as Hazel was in this novel, if a stranger that I'd never met before stares at me for long periods of time in a way that is borderline uncomfortable, and then has a cheesy pickup line that's also kind of predatory and is just not cute, I would not be swooning. I would be uncomfortable. I'd be looking like, who's gonna come help me exit this conversation? I'd be much more concerned rather than swept off my feet. I definitely would not be getting into a car with him to go to an undisclosed location to watch a movie. That's what I would not do. Obviously, it worked out fine. It's not supposed to be alarming. When I was in middle school, that interaction was so like, wow, like that's my fantasy, like, oh, come sweep me off my feet. But now that is, I don't need, it's kind of like toxic male vibes going on with him, and it's like, I don't need that in my life. The last noteworthy alarming thing that I wanted to mention was the fact that before Gus and Hazel date, or whatever, fall in love, before this story, he has a girlfriend who is also a cancer patient who passes. But Hazel is kind of confused because she looks like her doppelganger. In fact, the only reason that Gus was staring at Hazel at the support group that they met was because he was overcome by how much they look alike. Basically, after his previous girlfriend died, he replaced her with her twin. That is weird. Gus goes into this whole thing about how, like, the details of his previous relationship, something about the fact that he was drawn to her because they look so strikingly similar and behave in similar ways, because both are kind of aggressive. That I feel like that is weird. Like, he's looking for a replacement girlfriend to fill the exact same role, even though he was unhappy in the previous relationship. I'm not trying to say that, like, he's a bad guy or, like, their relationship was fake or anything like that. I'm just saying that some of the actions that he took don't sit right with me. Gus is not the only character in this story that I have qualms with. Hazel has some stuff that she needs to work out. Both Hazel and Gus are pretentious, but I'm going to focus on Hazel's pretentiousness because it is more present in the novel. Hazel acted as though, because she had the very traumatic and specific experiences that comes with dying, that she was superior to other people. And if other people who were in similar situations, i.e. other cancer patients, didn't have the exact same depressed or pessimistic outlook on life, that they were full of it, essentially, and were succumbing to this stereotype for choosing to live their life and fight this battle the way that they chose. Hazel isn't very sympathetic of other people's feelings, whether this be Isaac, who was dumped by his girlfriend because he was going blind, or even to other patients who in her support group were struggling. She kind of made fun of them and didn't even listen or care to hear their stories or support them in any way. As someone with a disability, I understand how isolating and frustrating it can be when the world projects their feelings and needs onto you, but the anger you feel towards society is not an excuse to be rude to other people going through literally the same thing you are. Obviously, characters are not perfect no matter what, and a part of any story or novel is growth. Like, that's what's interesting, is seeing people evolve and mature. But there were fundamental things throughout Hazel's story that she did get better at, but it was just so frustrating to sympathize with her as a character who was literally dying, because I felt like she was incredibly immature, despite the fact in a lot of ways she was incredibly mature, if that makes sense. Interestingly, I feel like there are a lot of parallels between my life and Hazel's, maybe because I have I have more of a connection to the characters and the circumstances they are going through in this novel. I might be more critical of it, so I will say that this review, it's not really a review, but this interpretation reaction is definitely biased. One thing in particular that I resonated with was the similarity between my mom and Hazel's mom. I think commonly, at least in my experience, when parents have children who face health challenges, they tend to be more lenient on their children than other parents of teenagers would be. My mom has always encouraged me and supported me to have adventurous life experiences, because she understood that it can be more difficult for me to have those experiences because of my disability. In the book, this can be seen by Hazel's mom giving them lots of privacy while they're in Amsterdam, knowing that they might sneak off to have sex in the hotel room, or even just letting Gus take them to Amsterdam after only knowing him for a few weeks. Honestly, Hazel's mom is probably one of my favorite characters in the whole book, because I felt like the role of the parents, specifically Hazel's parents in this novel, was incredibly accurate and well portrayed from my personal experience. Lastly, and this is what I will end it on, the really interesting similarity between Hazel's life and my life is that Hazel used her wish, her genie wish essentially, to meet her idol, who turned out to be kind of an ass. When I was in middle school, I used my Make-A-Wish to meet my idol, Ellen DeGeneres, and let's just say that was also a bit of a disappointment. I had a really fun time reading this book. I don't not recommend it. I thought it was really fine. I felt like it was cool. And books can make you feel things. And for me to think that this book was cool, that's like a 3 stars. So I had a really fun time. Thank you for watching this video. If you read this book, I'm really curious to see what you thought about this. Bye.